We will begin our meeting, Finance Committee meeting for June 1st. And I'd like to call the meeting to order. And we have 5 members present. Member Friedrich and Member Coates are not here today. So we will move on to number 2, and that's approval of the meeting minutes for May 4th of 2022. May I have a motion to approve those minutes? We have a motion by Member Lehman and a second by Vice Chair Thompson. Any additions, corrections, or comments related to those? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye. Opposed, same sign. The motion passes. Are there any members of the public or county employees to speak today? We have none. So we'll move on to departmental matters, and we'll have 4A, and that is Kathy Michael. She has nothing on to be presented. She does have a significant number of reports that she provides to us on a monthly basis. And does anybody have any questions for her related to those, since she has no action items? Very good. Thank you. Please thank your staff for all that they do. And I see that you're also bringing in all the equipment, and it's being stored in the hallway, right? Got it. Okay, I saw that today, so thank you very much. Marshall Thomas Thompson is not here today, but her items are also listed, all her reports. So if you do have questions, either our administrator, Cassie, will be able to help you, or I suggest that you reach out directly to her. All right, any questions or comments that need to be made related to animal control? Very good. We're going to move on to 4C, 1A, and that is Timothy Jorsak. Is that right? Jorsak. I am so sorry, Jorsak. I should know that. You've been present with us for 2 months, and I did not pronounce your name correctly, so I apologize for that.
We'll get you there. It's all right.
And he has a request approval of an ordinance of the McLean County Board to opt out of the, I'm sorry, I have no glasses other than my sunglasses, of the preferential assessment of affordable rental housing construction and rehabilitation pursuant to 35 ILCS 200-15-178. And may I have a motion to put that on the floor? We have a motion by Vice Chair Thompson and a second by Member Barnett. And you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the committee, thank you for letting me come before you this evening. It's a pleasure. I always enjoy the opportunity to see you folks and share a little bit about what we're doing downstairs. What I'm bringing to you today is it's an opt-out resolution from this Public Law 102-0175. I'm going to give you a little bit of the background of this law as I understand it, because its enactment does predate my appointment to this office, but I think with the benefit of some of the background, you'll understand kind of where we're coming from and where we look to go with this particular provision. So the General Assembly enacted this at some point last year. The resolution says it. I mean, this was primarily designed as a program for Cook County. Cook County has a number of existing, as you guys all know, Cook County sort of has its own set of property tax assessment rules. And so they've already got a category that's sort of already tailor-made to what this exemption does. And so while they were doing that, they decided to, well, let's just go ahead and throw it in there and make it statewide applicable. But with the option of outside of Cook County and 101 other counties, we have the choice of opting out of the provisions. What the statute is designed to do is give a preferential tax assessment to certain qualifying construction or rehabilitation of low-income housing projects. What the rules that it sets up are, it gives, I want to say three different, it's technically two and a half, but three different qualifying programs that you can receive for these levels of rehabilitation or new construction of low-income housing. The issues with the program, however, are when you look at what the statute outlines that we have to collect data-wise and implementation-wise from the county, it becomes very clear very quickly that there is a lot of information and a lot of hurdles that a jurisdiction even our size would have to come across in order to effectively implement this program. First and foremost is the amount of verification that we have to do of the projects themselves. The projects are required to meet several benchmarks for what they have to do in order to qualify for this exemption, not the least of which is a minimum amount of investment in each project in terms of raw construction dollars and rehabilitation dollars. We also are required then to verify the household income and maximum rent for each qualifying unit inside each and every project. That is a level of time and involvement by our staff that we frankly don't have the resources or ability to dedicate to doing. There are a number of other hurdles and benchmarks with what this statute does, but at the end of the day, what it ultimately comes down to is that there is not a project in McLean County right now that qualifies for this program because of the hurdles and roadmap, the hurdles involved in applying for it. And there is nothing that I know of on the foreseeable future based on this program. There's not a project in line that could qualify for this. So what we would end up doing is answering questions and verifying information for a project that there's realistically not going to meet challenges. So what I'm asking you to do is, the legislature did give the option that we opt out. We can opt out with the caveat that we can always opt back in. I recognize that low-income housing is a policy priority for a lot of advocacy interest groups, and that's wonderful. So if we do ultimately decide, if you decide as a board that this is a goal that we want to do, and there's a project that ends up coming along down the pike that we can work with them to help them meet these qualifications, we can always come back and revisit it and say, okay, let's take another look at it, and I'm happy to work with any interested party in helping, kind of identify what needs to be done, if that's the discretion. But right now, with our limited staff and resources, it would be quite the burden for something that is going to essentially be an unfunded mandate on our office and on the county.
Are there any questions? Member Lehman?
Yeah, thank you. So absolutely, there really is a massive housing need in McLean County. We definitely have housing need when we look at folks in lower socioeconomic areas being priced out, et cetera. So this program, it's fantastic that we've got something like this available through the state, understanding that right now is not the appropriate time since there isn't anything on the books that
Correct.
could really funnel in. What would be your suggestion, or what are some things that we can do to make sure that this stays top of mind, so that not only do we revisit this in an appropriate amount of time, but so the folks who would be in the position to propose said projects would be aware, and we could have the conversation in a timely manner before, I guess I'm not sure on how long we would need to take to opt in before a project would be able to be included. So
Okay.
just seeking your guidance on, or suggestions on timelines and how we can not let this pass us by should the opportunity arise.
And that's a great question. There are additional tools in here that we can avail ourselves of if necessary. So the project has I want to say 5-year window. So the assessment year 2027 for taxes payable 2028 is the last year you can feasibly qualify for this program under the statute. What the statute says is that if you opt in at any point in time, it can be retroactively applied. The only thing that the potential person would lose is they would lose those 1 or 2 years or however long it takes for the program to come back into place, and they do it. But they can retroactively qualify for the program if we put it into place. So what I would suggest is educating potential developers of projects like this what the requirements are, because I'm not kidding. It took us weeks and weeks of time to digest. We had numerous I chaired a working group with all the other supervisors of assessment in the state, and we kind of, we were trying to wrap our arms around this program. And so we spent a lot of time breaking down, and the result is this 10-page long application. There's a lot of information that needs to be collected and a lot of requirements they have to meet. One of the requirements they have to meet is they have to meet, and so that's one of the reasons why I'm confident that there's not anything in the works right now, is they have to meet requirements to have project labor agreements in place with the local building trades council. I spoke to the local building trades council about, and I said, we don't have any agreements in place right now with anything other than, I think they said it was primarily wind towers, but they didn't have anything residential that they were working on. So the developers would need to know that, if this is something you want to pursue, you need to make an agreement with your local project labor agreement. Here it's the McLean, Livingston, uh, committee. There are minimum investment requirements that you have to do to meet it, and there are, I think, 11 different categories that you can, there's electrical upgrades, there's HVAC upgrades. I mean, there's all sorts of different paths that you can take. But educating folks about, if we see that there is enough, that stuff is coming online, we can look at it and decide, yeah, this might be a path that we want to take.
Is it,
Please go
okay,
right
thank
ahead.
you. Is it a thing that, might benefit us if we put an asterisk by it and maybe revisit it this time next year? And at least have it as a conversation item to check in and see where we are with any projects that are in the community? Or is it something that you would come to us and let us know that something is afoot, that we should begin talking about this again?
I would leave that to your discretion, how you folks handle stuff. I'm not well versed in the committee's procedures in that way. But if you decide you want to revisit it, I'm happy to come back and talk about it and let you know what I've heard.
Before we do that, I just have a couple of questions, and that is, this is for the county. How does this impact the assessor for Bloomington, the city of Bloomington, and the town of Normal? Because those would be more likely to have large projects for low-income housing versus the county per se. But do we oversee the entire, this, over the town of Normal and the city of Bloomington? Or why are we addressing this just for the county, or is it also for our two main cities?
Well, so yeah, that's a great question. So the county opts out of it because it's a preferential assessment, and when you deal with a preferential assessment, those are generally administered at the county level. They're almost administered like deductions. So like with farmland, we do the actual administration and calculation of the farmland and the farmland values, even though they are, the township tells us that this is farmland. The county, we're the level where those calculations are made. So the same goes here. The township lets us know that these projects are coming online, and so then we would be the ones responsible for administering the preferential assessment.
So I'm not sure that we would need to revisit this then, primarily because the town of Normal and the city of Bloomington and any of those townships would be reaching out to you. Is that, and saying that this is a large project that has low-income housing. In addition, I would think that zoning would be involved in this, because whenever we see any low-income housing within the two communities, there is always a lot of press and a lot of discussion about where it's placed. And I'm not saying that we should not have low-income housing. I'm putting that on the record, okay? I'm not saying that we don't. I'm just saying that when that does occur, I always have seen a lot of discussion. And so at that point, when they're proposing it, I would think that the two cities would primarily be responsible to let us know. Is that correct, or am
Well,
I wrong?
yes and no. There are there are three different types of programs that are covered under this section. So you have your what we generally think of as the traditional, the Section 42, which are the single or scattered site projects. You have Section 8 vouchers, which are sort of individual to the potential tenant. And then you also have Section 515 programs, which are rural development housing assistance. So all of those fall under this umbrella. So there would be, there is a potential that it could fall outside of Bloomington and Normal uh, for people seeking this. That potential does exist. But so
But you said the amount of money that with the investment is significant. To what degree?
so you have to invest, depending on the program you're trying to qualify for, as little as $8 a square foot in qualifying costs. That's sort of the entry level, get you in the door for one of these benefits. For a new project, it's going to be $60 a square foot of either new construction or investment.
Okay.
And you have to be greater than 7 units. So it's not, a fourplex unit won't qualify for this. It would have to be something larger than, it would have to be a somewhat larger project in order to qualify for it.
As I know, Carlock has like 4
Mhm.
that were designed for that, and so they probably wouldn't qualify. So I'm not thinking that our rural villages might not qualify, but we wouldn't know that. So I'm going to ask Ms. Taylor how you would suggest that we revisit this to make sure that we don't lose track. Because I think opting out would be our best option at this point, but certainly do not want to ignore needs and opportunities for other people. So,
Thank you, Chairman Metzger. We had discussed this in administration in preparation for this meeting of kind of a chicken and the egg scenario of, right now we don't have any opportunities, but what if we have an opportunity? We don't want to discourage future building. And so I would suggest that on a semi-annual basis that Tim and I get together to discuss if the climate has changed, if he's received any inquiries about it. We can certainly do some um, information sharing to building trades to make sure that they are aware of this program so that it is shared with all of the entities that might be interested, including the Economic Development Council that just did a housing study. And that would be my recommendation, that he and I get together, and if there is new information that we need to bring to this committee and change our status, that we can do so at that time.
then,
Yeah, I want to stress I'm of the mind with you folks. I don't want to give the impression that I discourage this at all. I want to make sure that we're coming at it with all the information that we can, and that we're doing it the right way.
so we'll leave that to administration and to the assessor's office to proceed should that, and the communication, then our administration will make sure that is sent to the appropriate individuals. Um, So we have a motion to opt out. For that, are there any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor of opting out of, I guess that would be the preferential assessment, affordability, rental housing, construction, and rehabilitation efforts, the ordinance, say aye. Opposed? Very good. The motion passes. If for some reason we would need to revisit this and it's in between, I mean, we can quickly get this as a stand-up or if it's in between the times. So we will certainly work with any, if this would come forward, I think you and our administration need to know that this committee will work very diligently to turn it around as quickly as we can. All right, very good,
Absolutely.
thank you.
Thank you very much.
We're going to move on to 4D1A, and that's with our Michelle Anderson, and she's our county auditor, and I think she brought Hope Wheeler with her, who is our our auditing firm. And so D1A is the presentation and acceptance and placement on file of the popular annual financial report. That's the PAFR, and that's for through December 31st, 2021. And those can be found, as you know, in your packet. May I have a motion to put that, place that on file? Have a motion by Member Barnett and a second by Member Lehman. And you can proceed, Ms. Anderson.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go solo here up first before I have Ms. Wheeler join me. The popular annual financial report is not audited by our outside auditors. The numbers all contain information from the report that was audited, but they don't actually issue an opinion on it. So that's why I'm presenting and not Ms. Wheeler. So I've just got a few highlights here to go over. And the PAFR was the one in the packet. That's the pretty colored one that everybody enjoys to read more than the 225-page one. We did receive the GFOA award again for 2020. The revenue sources for the county for 2021, and Ms. Morlock, I emailed you the Word version of this, so you have it. The county revenue sources for 2021 were 99.4 million, and they were up from 92.94 last year. Property tax accounts for roughly 37% of our revenue. Last year it was 39%, but that's kind of the makeup of where our revenue is coming from. Intergovernmental went up slightly to 42%, and interest revenue is under 1%. In the last 2 years, it's gone down $1 million. And I know you guys are well aware of that, but it was just kind of, GFOA made a recommendation that we start showing 3 years comparison. And so when you have 2019 there at 1.4 million, and then you see 2021 it's 444,000, you're like, whoa. You know, it really just puts it right there for you. And then for the county expenses, they were actually down for 2021 for the entire county, down to 87 million, down from 88.8 million. The general government was roughly 36% of total expenses, and public safety was roughly 32%. The reason that general government is probably trending slightly higher is that is where the PBC bond payments are coming out of. They're part of the facilities budget, and so that is falling under general. So that's probably why that would look higher versus public safety, which is what we all think would be higher. And the nursing home, over 95% this year. It had historically been in the 80s. This year, over 95% of revenue was from charges for services, and 53% were from personnel. So I would be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions, insights that anyone wants to ask?
And a shout out to Ms. McLean and the health department. She had lots of great accolades that they did for last year, so she was very helpful in that.
All right, I think you're still good to continue.
Okay.
And I don't take offense. I don't think having no questions is a negative. All right?
No, that's fine.
I appreciate the information that you're providing in addition to what we've been given. And I think all of us have said that how much we appreciate these. Our constituents appreciate it. And when we talk to people, this is an easy way for us to share the story.
Yeah,
So
I've
thank
done
you.
15 CAFRs, and I think this was my 11th PAFR. And when, I know I've told this story before, when I showed my parents once, my mother, who has a degree from Illinois State, was a teacher for over 30 years, I showed her the CAFR, she kind of just went like this, like it was like germs or something. And I showed her the PAFR, she looked through it, she's like, oh, this is what you do? It's just, it's a lot more user friendly. For the average consumer, this is going to be what they want. And that's all on the PAFR, so I don't know if you need a vote before I go to the CAFR or.
Yes, we do. Thank you. We will need to vote on placing this on file. All in favor of placing this PAFR on file, say aye. Opposed? Very good. The motion passes. We're going to move on to D1B, and that's presentation and acceptance and placement on file the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2021 audit and the comprehensive annual financial report by Clifton Larson. And we have two, we have the CAFR, and then we also have a single audit report, I think that'll be distributed. Why don't
So-
we go ahead with just the first one, which is D1B I. All right?
Okay, can I go ahead or do we need to vote to
Please.
put it on?
We need to vote to put it on first, so may I have a motion? We have a motion by Vice Chair Thompson and a second by Member Barnett. Very good, thank you.
Does that mean I've been here too long that I know that? I'm just helping Julie. So the 1 and 2 thing. So we do have the CAFR done. It was included either in the packet or potentially a link to that you followed. And then the single audit, we are still working to finalize this year with all of the new ARPA, the American Rescue Plan Act money, and all the COVID money that was still flowing through at least part of 2021. We are still trying to get that done. We will be done within the timelines required by state and federal governments, but it is not complete as of today. So you will see Hope and or myself, maybe both, our smiling faces in July presenting that.
So you're saying the second one the single audit will have next month?
Correct.
Perfect. Okay, so we only have one to do today.
This is Hope Wheeler. She is a principal at Clifton Larson Allen out of the Champaign office, and this is their 3rd year with us, I believe. And I will let her start.
Hello, thank you for having me here tonight to present the results of the 2021 audit. As discussed already, we are auditing the annual comprehensive financial report, the germ-infested, I think you called it. A lot of work goes into that large report, but I agree, not as nearly as easy to read as the PAFR. So I am glad that you guys do issue that too, as a great document to summarize everything in a good readable format. I'll focus tonight on our audit process over the financial statements. And I summarized everything into a presentation just because it is a lot of information out there. I will go over a little bit about the audit process and then go over some highlights from the report deliverables and talk about the report deliverables, and then available for any questions that you have. Just to talk a little bit about the terms of the engagement, we are hired to express an opinion on that annual comprehensive financial report, and then also conduct a single audit, which is the audit of your federal funds. We conduct this audit under government auditing standards, essentially because of the grant funding you get and because you're subject to the single audit. Then we summarize any audit findings or recommendations we have and present them to management and your finance committee here. Excuse me. We also are engaged to issue an opinion on the circuit clerk, the separate circuit clerk financial statements, and then the Office of the Administrative Courts also require a compliance examination related to the circuit clerk. Those are both part of the overall audit process. And then lastly, really typically the last couple of things we do is audit the consolidated year-end financial report. That was a new report required a few years back related to GATA. And then the annual financial report that goes to the Illinois Comptroller's Office, which takes really the same numbers from the large report and just puts them in a different format that the state requires. I'm going to skip a little bit here, just talk a little bit about the audit process. We typically start the audit process, and we did this year in December. We come out and get an updated understanding of your internal control processes and do some random sampling and testing of those controls that are in place to make sure they're operating as designed and effectively. And do some other procedures then that we can do in advance of year end. Then we come back at the end of March, and that's when we really start the crux of the audit, the year-end audit procedures that cover the entire year, but then all of your year-end December 31 balances. We use a risk-based approach. Obviously, we're not going to be testing every transaction, so we analyze your financial statements into what the higher risk areas are, and then within those areas, determine the best way to test. Not going to read through each of these, but mention here on this slide what some of those areas, financial statement areas are that we focus on, including internal control testing. Then, as a result of that, these are the reports that we issue in a little more, these are the ones we've issued to date so far. The audit opinion on the annual comprehensive financial report, Michelle prepares that report, and we take the procedures we performed on the audit and the trial balance and then make sure it's flowing into that financial report properly. We also required to issue a governance communication letter, and that just talks about certain required components. We'll go over that letter here in a moment. Then, as I mentioned, we do the audit under Yellow Book or GAS, Government Auditing Standards, and that then there's a resulting report on that that talks about any significant findings that we have. And then a management letter if we have other recommendations that we want to put in writing and share with management and the finance committee. I didn't put on here, I forgot, I guess, to put on here, the circuit clerk audit and compliance examination is issued also. That says to date, because of what Ms. Anderson mentioned, of the single audit is still being completed. It has gotten more complex with additional new federal funding and somewhat moving target compliance requirements, and just creates a decent amount of additional work and takes a little bit longer to get it completed and through all levels of review. To talk about the audit opinion, that is attached to the ACFR, and there it is an unmodified opinion. That doesn't necessarily sound like a positive, but it is, meaning there are no modifications in our opinion. It is a clean opinion. Just wanted to point out two things about our opinion this year. It looks a little different from last year because there was a suite of 8 new audit standards that had to be applied this year that changed the wording, the format of our audit opinion. In the end, it still says the same thing. It's a clean, unmodified opinion, just in a different format. There's also an emphasis of matter paragraph in there that talks about some funds, a handful of funds are shown differently in the prior year financial statements to the current year financial statements, which changes some of the beginning balances. So I just wanted to point that out. In total, it's still the same, but just movement of where the funds are classified. Then the Government Auditing Standards Report, that should be an information that you've received. An excellent report here for the county is that's a clean report. There are no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies, in our opinion, reported in the Government Auditing Standards Report. There are, I'll go over these next. We did issue a management letter. This is if we have other findings or observations or recommendations we wanted to share. And we did have a handful of items here that we went over with management and want to share with you as committee too. One of the items we noted is the nursing home allowance for uncollectible balances. That's a significant estimate that, you don't know what's uncollectible, but GAAP requires an estimate of that. So we just recommend looking at the internal controls and the estimation process related to the allowance for uncollectible balances. Make sure that's being looked at annually, that specifics are being looked at, specific accounts, and that there's a process to write those off when needed, not that you still can't collect them, and that there's a good collection process over those. And I think that, from my understanding, that is something that's already in the works being discussed. Inventory internal controls, we noted a couple items. Inventory balances have grown over the past couple of years. Yes,
Ms. Wheeler, occasionally we may have a member that'll have a question, and please feel free to go
Absolutely.
ahead and call on them.
sure.
Member Thompson has a question.
I'd have waited, but I forgot.
I meant to say jump in.
Just want to be clear, I think the answer, I already know the answer, but you're not saying that there's issues with the estimates. You're just, this is more of a procedural statement in regards to the first line.
Maybe some of both, actually. Procedural for sure on having a process over looking at that closely each year and looking at specific balances, and then just making sure there's a good process for collection. But I also feel like there's a chance the estimate's low. An estimate's an estimate, so I don't necessarily know what it should be either. But based on my understanding of the procedures, I feel like maybe the estimate is too low. So that's something I feel like could be looked at. I know you have a new administrator in place, and I think he's interested in looking at that too and is already in the process of that.
Okay.
And I will just say that normally we would not be discussing these, but last year, Member Friedrich asked that any and everything identified that was not perfect be brought to the committee. So that is why we are doing this screen, is for Member Friedrich, who's not here.
And based on that first one also, I think, Cassie, you're shaking your head that that's already being worked on. And so I think as a committee, we'll expect you and our administrator to continue to pursue that.
The second item was inventory internal controls. As I said, inventory has grown, so there's been more of a focus on that from the audit perspective. And this specifically relates to the highway department. And while I think there are good processes in place, internal controls of certain people counting, then someone else looking at the counts, certain people accumulating the cost basis and others looking at that, it's not documented. So we're recommending that those internal controls be documented. So there is an audit trail for that. And then also there was a question that came up on inventory is supposed to be recorded at the lower of cost or market. And there were certain cases where it wasn't the cost basis that was recorded. It was not a significant amount. So like Ms. Anderson mentioned, not a significant issue, but just something we wanted to bring up where there could be some improvements made.
I have a question more for Ms. Anderson, and that has to, when these, the management letter recommendations come forward, what is our procedure to notify those department heads of these audit recommendations?
Ms. Taylor, do you want that?
So after our initial review with administration, the auditor, and other financial leadership, it is administration that will reach out to each of those departments to see what procedures or strategies have been in place to improve. And I know Hope Wheeler and Clifton Larson Allen have discussed this with many of the department heads already. I'm thinking of the highway department and IT in particular have had discussions with the auditor to have them explain in detail what they see as the improvements and how they could go about that. So we will follow up with them in the year to come.
And this is more of an HR issue, so I'm not, but as an oversight, I think we need to ensure that these are addressed and maybe put into a department head's appraisal to make sure that those get accomplished for the next year, so we don't see these same things on a management letter in the future. So each department head, I would recommend that we would add these to their performance appraisal to bring these forward and address these, so we're sure that they could get done. So that would be.
And I will say that part of the highway issue is they sell on occasion signs, pipes, culverts, whole bunch of things I'm not 100% sure of, to townships. And so I think our recommendation for them in this instance, besides number one, just somebody dating and initialing, when Jerry talked through the process, there was a lot of checks and balances, but nobody was dating an initial that they looked at it. So if you don't date and initial it, Clifton Larson Allen doesn't know for sure that anybody else reviewed it other than somebody who wrote down a number. So number one, that was it. Number two is they'll need to start keeping one list for inventory with the lower cost or market basis, and then one for sale to townships. Because obviously, when we sell it to a township, we need to replenish our stockpile. So we need to sell it to them at the market rate, which we have to pay for the replacement. But for inventory, we need to do it at the cost basis. But I have full faith in Denise and everybody out there to have 2 Excel worksheets, so it shouldn't be a problem.
Another,
I just kind of want to put this in perspective, and I'm guessing at this, but this is probably not a big number we're talking about, right?
Right, it was
Yeah.
not. That's, we use when there's a number tied to it, we use certain thresholds to determine whether it's that material weakness or significant
Right.
deficiency. It was below both of those.
Yeah.
But something worth bringing up, especially because there wasn't necessarily an understanding of these should be at cost. So she's like, oh, I'm really glad to know that, and I'll make sure we're doing that right here from
That's
here
my
on.
point. I just, while it sounds terrible, it's pretty low hanging fruit here. I mean, it's.
No, and absolutely, that's a
Yeah,
great
and I don't
point.
want to.
If this were anything material, from a financial standpoint, it would not be on this letter. We would not have a clean opinion, and we would be having a different discussion, so.
thank you. Go ahead and proceed.
The next bullet point is Health Department receivables and unearned revenues, balances, internal controls. There are a lot of different grants going through the Health Department, as you know, and it's somewhat of a complex area with the timing of the state funding and contract year ends versus the fiscal year end of the county. So we found a few errors in what's recorded as a receivable or what's on an unearned listing, like the detailed ledger not tying to the general ledger. So recommending just close review of the receivables and unearned or deferred balances to make sure those are being reviewed closely and tie out and are properly recorded. Yes.
I don't want to interrupt your presentation at all, and maybe the rest of the committee won't agree with this, but would it make more sense to refer the items on this list to the oversight committees for those departments and/or the department heads through administration rather than finance talking through things to do with the health department that we really don't have any say over? But maybe I'm the only person who's thinking
I
that.
think it's important since and that was the reason for this, was that we are the oversight committee for that audit. So the intent was for us to know that. But I think you make a very good point, and that was really the point I was making, that we need to address these with the specific departments. And that's why I said, I think having that a part of a department appraisal.
Their annual review. And,
An annual review,
yeah.
because I think all of these, from what I can see, are going to fall under somebody that's not per se, elected official.
Right.
So they will be those individuals responsible. Am I correct that they're not going to fall under an elected official's?
I think only one would.
All right. So in that particular case, then we'll need to make, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't let each of those department or committees be aware of these also. I think that's a very good idea. And since we are the first this month,
Okay.
then we have that opportunity to make sure, and that could be maybe added to your report for each one, just that there was a management letter or something, so each committee is aware, and then that you're working with that. Maybe you and I can talk about that, but I agree. I think it's important that those oversight committees are aware. and again, I think it's important to note that Ms. Anderson has said it over and over again, that these, and Ms. Wheeler has confirmed, these are not significant issues, because if they were significant issues, we would not have a clean audit. So these are just to make sure that we are cleaner than clean, I guess. So
Yes, this
we've
is-
washed our hands, now we're disinfecting, maybe.
This is my 15th show, so to speak, for this presentation, and this is the first time we are going through this. That's how non-financially significant it is to the financials. So if that helps alleviate anybody's,
And I would just add that typically this management letter is shared with administration so we can overview these strategies for procedural improvements with each department. It's not really a board policy decision and something that we usually bring on public record for improvement. And so the process that I would prefer to do is to speak to each of those department heads for process improvement, and then share that in a different format with oversight as they come up.
I just wonder if that wouldn't be a more appropriate approach than us taking another 20 minutes to talk through all the things on this list, and maybe we can get more into the meat of the presentation.
Thoughts, committee? Member Friedrich would disagree, but Member Friedrich is not here. Why don't we go ahead and just provide a quick overview for all of those? We'll kind of break it in the middle, and then, again, knowing that our administration is proceeding with the proper steps. All right, so thank you.
Okay. The fourth bullet is just recommending a review over the workers' compensation self-insurance reserve worksheet to make sure it's calculated accurately. The fifth is there's a gap requirement to accrue employer taxes on compensated absences. So your accrued vacation balance, you're supposed to have taxes accrued with that. So recommend adding that in the future. Then second to last item is there were some loan proceeds this year related to Public Building Commission, making sure those are recorded properly as loan proceeds and the related debt recorded for financial statement reporting purposes. And lastly, IT controls. The IT portion was a longer list the past couple of years, so I'm happy to say this is reduced down to 2 items this year: a documented strategic plan and more frequent offline backups. The other items we'd recommended in the past have worked their way off the list. And I will add that Craig wanted me to be sure to say, and I will on his behalf, that the offline backups, I think that's already occurring or in process right now too. So I'll just add to this is we have these discussions each year with a list of items. I think we did put them in writing the first year. Last year we didn't. Because professionally, we are able to put them in writing or decide if it's just an oral discussion with management. But with that request last year, we did put them in writing. But I will say from the first year of our audit, this is the third year, this list is decreased, and follow-up is happening on them. So I do appreciate that. We talked through them at one of our early planning calls, and a lot of the items from last year have been marked off this list and taken care of. So I do appreciate good follow-up. That doesn't always happen. In some audits, I'm talking about the same things every year. So then the other letter I wanted to go over as part of the audit process is this governance and communication letter. So this is our letter to you guys because we do work so closely with management just to share certain items that the auditing standards tell us to share with you as a finance committee. Once again, this is a pretty clean letter just to go over some of the highlights of the letter. There were no new significant GASBs that changed your financial statements this year. And pointing out here that I already mentioned that emphasis of matter paragraph in the opinion this year, that there was some changes in application of GASB 84 this year, just the movement of some funds from one type to another. pointing out too, as we've talked about a little bit, there are certain estimates on the accrual basis of accounting. So here we mentioned these items are the 4 most significant estimates in your financial statements: the net IMRF pension liability, the OPEB, other post-employment benefit liabilities. Both of those are from actuarial studies. Self-funded insurance liability, and then the allowance for uncollectible receivables. And those are areas that we review each of these to determine if we feel like it's a reasonable estimate, but there's no hard number to necessarily audit. We had no difficulties with management or no disagreements on our auditing procedures or accounting methods. And like I said, I haven't said this yet, but this is really very quick turnaround for an audit of this size. So I appreciate everyone's work in making that happen with the auditor's office and the treasurer's office. A lot of time and effort I know goes into this process for them, and we appreciate their responses to us, and then the administrator's office too. So then the last column there, if we have some adjusting entries that we propose, we can accumulate them just to make sure the smaller adjustments don't add up to a large number and pass on them. The past adjustments are attached to the governance letter if you want to see those. If you have questions on those, let me know. I'm not going to go through each of those. But then, as mentioned, we had no material audit adjustments. If we did, that would be in that government auditing standards report as a finding. So what I appreciate for that, and I'm sure you do too, is you're looking at good numbers throughout the year when you're looking at your reports.
And just so you're aware, I know that Ms. Anderson gives us a quarterly statement, so she has, obviously is up on that on a quarterly basis, so she's not panicking when the audit comes around. She's already got all of that done. And I know the treasurer is doing the same thing probably on a monthly basis too, that she makes sure that everything is tight before proceeding. So, thank you.
Yes.
I have just a few financial highlights, if the committee is okay with that. It's not more procedural, it's more actual outcome. Is that okay, Ms. Metzger? Okay. The only changes to the financials this year, as Ms. Wheeler discussed, we have 2 funds that moved from special revenue to custodial, and they were Township Motor Fuel and Township Bridge. The only new fund we had this year was the American Rescue Plan Act Fund, and it rolls into the general fund. So you will see those numbers on pages 79 and 80. You will see all the details on the ARPA fund. For the financial results, the nursing home, which can be found on page 10, has had an operating loss the last 10 years and 13 of the last 15. In the last 11 years, they've lost a total of $12.3 million, and their net position has decreased over $6.5 million, while their census has gone down to 73 people. For this year, they had an operating loss of $588,000, and their net position is about $3.5 million, and $275,000 of that is a federal grant that would not be considered typical and should not be expected. For the general fund, on page 80, for the true general fund, the fund balance is at $4.9 million, which is great. When I say true general fund, that is the general fund column on that page 80, and that is the fund that those dollars the county board can choose to spend however they wish. A lot of the other funds are restricted. For instance, you can't use the highway fund to pay Ms. Taylor and I's salaries, stuff like that. The true general fund is truly, if you can use it for county government, we can use it. For our reported general fund, which rolls about 8 or 9 funds into it, fund balance is up $7.79 million, revenue is up over $6 million, and expenses only went up $1.28 million. And all of that being said, only $2 million of that is the ARPA, so it's not overly inflated. When you look at the balance sheet, for just ease terms on page 79, the general fund cash is up over $23 million, but 15 of that is ARPA money sitting there waiting to be spent by the end of 2024, I believe. Assets are also up almost $24 million, but again, 15 million of it is ARPA. And liabilities is 15.7 million, and all of that is basically the ARPA fund sitting there as unearned. And for the special revenue funds, the health department funds, their fund balance is down just over 400,000. And the highways 4 main fund balance is up over 3.5 million last year. And overall fund balance for special revenue funds are 4.89. So basically what I'm telling you is they're all very healthy and I don't have any real concerns, so.
I want to thank you, you and your staff, as well as the treasurer and administration for making this happen. And Ms. Wheeler, we appreciate your time. And any other questions? Seeing none, let's vote on placing on file the CAFR. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Very good. The motion passes, and then next month maybe next month if
Yeah.
everything goes well.
And-
If not, August.
And I would just like to say how great it is to collaborate with administration and specifically Kathy Dreyer. She helps with MD&A, and when I have questions coming up and need something, Kathy understands that when I'm asking today, it's because I needed it yesterday, not 6 weeks from now. So she's really great at getting it and communicating when she's going to be out. So it's great to have a partner in administration. So I'm really excited. So I just wanted to say thank you publicly. I know I've sent in about 15 emails, but
So administration, especially Kathy Dreyer. Yeah. Hey, we understand. We've been there too, so thank you. All right, there's no other information to be presented, so we will move on to Becky McNeil, and that would be 4E1A. And we've got a couple of things that we have been seeing, not frequent, not lately, but we're probably going to start seeing a few more of the request approval of the real estate deed and covenants resolution for real estate parcel 21-05-433-015 and real estate parcel 18- is that 05? 052-76001. So may I have a motion to put that on the floor? I have a motion by Vice Chairman Thompson and a second by Member Barnett. And those are in our packet, so I don't know if we need any additional discussion on those. Does anybody have any questions related to those? We have one that's in Anchor Township, I think, and one was on Front Street, so just two of them. No questions?
We haven't brought parcels forth for a while. And primarily, that's just because our portfolio is really, really small. I have a very small portfolio of parcels. One of these was, as I explained, it was basically a payment plan that the taxpayer set up with the trustee. And that's the goal of this program. The goal of the program is really one of the goals is to help people, keep their property. So, the trustee went all the way to tax deed, could have said, no, we're not going to do this. But through the trustee, they were able to work out a payment plan where they could pay the full taxes, and then we reconvey back to them ownership of their property. So, and then the other one was a situation where it had just been on the tax rolls unpaid, went to sale. Those parcels that are out on the county, it's really good to see some of this turnover occur. These are not parcels that a typical tax buyer wants. These are parcels that are very messy, uninhabitable, have lots of liens on them, different circumstances like that. So, okay.
Okay. All in favor of 4E1A, say aye. Opposed? Very good, thank you. We're going to move on then. I think we just received our documents for 4E1B, and that's accept and place on file the county treasurer's monthly financial reports. And may I have a motion for that? I think Member Erickson's making the motion. And we have a second by Member Lehman. I just have, somebody has to know you're here, so you're so quiet today. So, I do know that. Ms. McNeil, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I have a smaller report for you this month. First of all, today is June 1st, and so it's kind of hard to get data for the month of May on the 1st of June. It doesn't just come out that easily. So we don't have a report on the self-insured plan. And then secondly, we have property taxes coming in right now very, very, very heavily. And so the office is quite busy right now. But I did capture the tax revenue coming to the county from the state of Illinois. We've been talking about this for months. Our tax revenue is up. PPRT, it's just insane. You know, like county treasurers throughout the state of Illinois, I'm just shaking my head. Like, I mean, because some of this, as you know, comes from recalculations at Illinois Department of Revenue. And so we're really at their mercy, and we've been through this before. But we also know that, in particular with PPRT, I've covered it in the past, how the reporting and the process and as well as the income for corporations is all up right now. I went into that great detail a few months ago when we looked back over 10 years as to how that revenue had changed. So anyway, right now, here through the end of May, we have total revenue of $8,372,507 compared to $5,459,000. So we're up 2.9 million compared to a year ago. And when we look at the budget, as of right now, we are 3,143,000 over budget. We're over budget by 60%. So this is definitely going to be a very good year as far as that revenue goes and that budget comparison. The shared sales tax, that is another area, and all of this is kind of driven off of what's going on in the economy right now, and things that are going on here in Bloomington, Normal, McLean County. We have some economic development that is feeding into some of this, obviously. But shared sales tax, here year to date, we have 1,919,000 compared to 1,561,000. That my eyes are so blurry right now. 1,561,000. So I don't have my readers with me. I'm sorry. It's been a long day. Fund balance, that shared sales tax fund used for a variety of sources, 13,600,000. Property tax revenue, we were able to push out a distribution the last week of May. And a lot of that for us depends on when escrow files come in. We have an amazing system for pulling in escrow files right now. And basically, I just tell the majority of our mortgage companies, get it in here a week before, because we've got taxpayers that are trying to check those numbers. We had someone call today, going to closing tomorrow. Her escrow is still not in. So, I can't demand that they do it, but it's always helpful when they do, because then we can turn around and distribute that out to the taxing bodies, which McLean County, as you can see, is a recipient of. 7.7 million has been distributed to McLean County during the month of May. The motor fuel tax, the renewal fund, you can see the benefits that the renewal fund is generating on the county and the township motor fuel. Total county motor fuel, 1.4 million. Township, 1.2 million. So, any questions? So the next report is the investment report, and like I said, I mean, we couldn't really pull any rates early on this morning, and if it wasn't available early this morning, it just didn't get done because there's way too much going on in that office today. But this is we continue to have the tremendous benefit of the ARPA funds. The Fund 0401, AP clearing negative 180. We use a clearing account to move all accounts payable through, and then we reimburse that clearing account with ACH transfers. And this is a matter of timing, although we've got to continue to watch this nursing home because cash is continuing to get low, but it fluctuates. It fluctuates so rapidly because now, they are pulling in, but we've also got things that within the county that the nursing home, liabilities that the nursing home owes for their health insurance, their payroll, and their FICA and their IMRF, and then a portion of that comes back to them as an agreement that county has. So anyway, I just wanted to explain why that was sitting there at the negative, because there really wasn't at that point in time any one account we could pull that balance in from. So, any questions on this report? Once we get into the month of July, it's when I'm going to be out like fishing around for investments where we can lock in. Rates are still moving around. I did not go out and capture the Illinois funds rate today, but I mean, compared to where we have been, the Illinois funds rate is increasing substantially. I mean, as the auditor noted earlier, I think in her presentation, she said something about the interest on investments. I mean, we've all heard this story, and I've been very vocal that we were not in an environment where we could earn interest. We were in an environment where we were lucky to, have the banks willing to collateralize our funds because they certainly did not need our cash. So they weren't going to pay interest rates, and the Fed rate wasn't moving. But that is changing, so we'll see where we go with that here in 2022. And the final report that I have is the nursing home. The nursing home has reported in through the end of April. Primary revenue sources is obviously their state of Illinois, their private pay, their Medicaid or Medicare revenue. For the month of April, $629,000. Overall, $2.5 million. This is 4 months into the year, and they're at 36.2%. The monthly revenue, $633,523. Expenses, $902. The year to date, actually, I'll just go on down to year to date. Their revenue is currently exceeding their expenses by $308,000. However, their MedLife, there were 2 quarters of that were due. The first quarter was not reported into the general ledger, recorded into the general ledger until May. So you're going to see 2 payments of MedLife come out next month when I come in here, and you're going to be like, oh my gosh. But that's the timing of it. So they owe that liability to the Employee Benefit Fund for their employee insurance. Outstanding AR, $3,735,245. The nursing home, they do actively send adjustments to us, not only for 2022, but for prior periods. During the course of that audit presentation, I think that they were focusing a lot on the private pay, and that is definitely an area where we, need the nursing home to take a look at what's out there. But we get adjustments quite frequently for Medicare and state of Illinois. So the cash and investments, $451,481, and the fund balance, fund equity, $3,860,754. Any questions? I will bring to you next month. I wanted to do it this month because I know it's a topic of conversation, but I will actually just bring it to you next month after we get everything in. The Rivian and the grant abatements I know you're going to talk about. We are in the final year of the Rivian abatement. The abatement for Rivian this year is quite significant because of the assessed value. all of those improvements that they were putting into place now, that is on the tax rolls. But next month I'll come in and I'll provide you with a summary of the property tax abatements that are affecting the county and the history on that. So
And that's all abatements then?
I will do that.
Okay,
I'll just give you a summary of all of the abatements. All of the abatements are out on our website, as well as the years, all of the years. So you can go out and see the total that Rivian, not yet because we haven't gotten all of the agreements in from the taxing districts, but eventually we'll have everything all updated for tax year 21, payable 22.
okay.
Okay.
Any questions, any additional questions? Again, we do appreciate the efforts, especially this time of year. It's getting money in and sending money out is quite a challenge, and we recognize your efforts, so thank you very much.
Thank you. And my staff, they do an amazing job. And Lockbox out in Kansas City, yes, they're out in Kansas City, but I mean, it's amazing what they are able to push to us on a daily basis too.
Perfect.
So,
Well,
thank you.
you chose a good vendor apparently, right?
Yes.
All right.
Thank you.
Yes, we're going to vote for E1B, and that is accept the financial reports. All in favor, say aye. This is to request the approval of an abatement ordinance abating the 2021 taxes on property purchased by Rivian. And there is quite a documents found in our packet on that. And may I have a motion to put that on the floor? A motion by Member Barnett, a second by Member Lehman. And I think most everything is pretty clear. At least I found it rather clear in our packets. But if you have additional, if there are some questions, I think that Ms. Taylor is willing to take a shot at it. But if she cannot come up with any of the specifics, we may have to reach out to the EDC and Mr. Hoban. So. Any questions? Member Erickson, please.
Can't go the whole meeting without saying something. Being a record. I had a question about the information that was provided to the EDC to make a recommendation that they had met all the benchmarks. It is my recollection that that information is of public knowledge, and that if someone wanted to go to the EDC, they could look at that information for themselves. I believe that's one of the requirements that we had wanted when we had done that. Is that correct?
It's my understanding that any board member that wants to view that material can go to the EDC and review it. As far as it being public record, I would have to double check those documents.
Yeah, could you
You
find
might-
out? Because
you
I
might
think
know more than
I
I.
think that's something that we ought to consider. I believe that when we did that, I mean, there were certain things that potentially Rivian didn't want competitors to know. So maybe it may have been limited to certain people, but I would like to remember. I'd like to have my recollection refreshed if other people had access to that.
I will confirm
It
that.
is true, though, that county board members can go out there and see that if they wish to. And
I
then
will find that information out for you.
Then I had another point here. I know that the treasurer had mentioned that the abatements, that they're quite significant, but that's actually a good thing because we put benchmarks in there. And we said if you want to get anything, you have to meet certain criteria. And so, I mean, the fact that they have been investing in the property would also end up meaning they're getting a more significant tax abatement for it. But I suppose it depends how you look at it. That's a good thing, I suppose, because they are investing, and that's kind of what we wanted them to do, as opposed to not having done that. I just want to point out to the members that I remember when we had this discussion, when Rivian came in here, the board was pretty adamant, I believe, about making sure that benchmarks were in there, that they just weren't given an abatement for just existing. They were given abatements to meet certain criteria. And some of that is listed there in the letter of Patrick Hoban in section 2.02, that, you had to do certain things to get these things. And the EDC did, I can't remember, it was a few years ago. I can't remember the name of the company, but we did deny an abatement for one company because they didn't meet the benchmarks. So if you don't meet the benchmarks, you don't get it. So I think that the public should be aware that one of the reasons they're getting the abatement is because we put in their benchmarks that they had to meet. And so, and we have denied someone an abatement before because we didn't feel they met the appropriate criteria. Anyway, just wanted to say that. Thanks.
Thank you for those comments, and I agree with what observations you've made, and I think that Ms. Taylor will, you'll get back to him on whether that's public or whether it is strictly for county board members or administration, I would assume also. Any other questions or comments related to the Rivian abatement item on the floor? Seeing none, we are going to vote. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Very good. The motion passes. We're going to move on. We have the similar thing with Brandt Industries. So we have for F1B, request approval of an abatement ordinance abating 2021 taxes on property purchased by Brandt Industries. And may I have a motion on that one? I have a motion by Vice Chair Thompson and a second by Member Lehman. And I think this one is a bit smaller, but still equally as important.
Absolutely.
So,
And it's a similar project development agreement that has been reviewed by Patrick Hoban through the EDC to provide an independent review to make sure that they have provided satisfactory proof of their obligations, as Member Erickson indicated.
questions? Seeing none, all in favor of 4F1B, no, excuse me, 4F1B, yes, say aye. Opposed? Very good. Motion passes. And the only thing we have left, we have to pay some bills and we have some transfers also. I don't think we have any transfers. We do not have transfers. We're just going to pay bills once I see the small print to the tune of, and we did get, I know, I'm like, I have so many glasses, and I left the pair I had selected that was quite stylish, to be honest, at home. Okay, at my expense, Michelle Anderson has reviewed the bills and certified that they complied with the McLean County Board adopted ordinances, resolutions, and policies. And we have a $1,895,601 with 29 cents. May I have a motion to, we have a vice chair motion and the second by Member Lehman. All in favor? Opposed? Very good. The motion passes and the bills are paid. And we are adjourned.